Welcome back inside the Paris Sea Palace, high above 2919 East Broadway. This is the Jake Feinberg Show on Power Talk 1210. Please go to Power Talk 1210 Live. Is it, Jackson? Is it Power Talk 1210?
That's correct.
Okay, PowerTalk1210Live.com to stream the shows. We're getting adjusted here to extraterrestrial radio worldwide. Stream all of our live shows, including the Jake Feinberg Show, and it is an honor to bring in one of the greatest guitarists in our country's history, playing across the spectrum: funk, boogie-woogie, blues, a little bit of jazz. Kal David, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Hey, thank you very much. What a wonderful introduction.
Well, I mean, that was that wasn't even, that didn't even do justice to it. I wanted to ask you. I just got off the phone with my previous guest, and I asked him. I wanted to ask you the same question. You've worked with a lot of cats. Can you talk about a time earlier in your career where somebody exhibited leadership that inspired you?
Leadership.
Could be nonverbal. I guess on the bandstand. I mean, something that on the bandstand that was, because I think I look at this as a sociological show too, and I think we're lacking a lot of leadership in our society. So I'm trying to get at the titans of yesteryear when you were just kind of woodshedding, getting your own sound.
Well, just about every band I've been in, unless it was as a sideman backing up an artist, every band I've been in, I've been the leader of the band. Even groups that had, a group name like the Rhinestones or Illinois Speed Press, I was pretty much the guy that talked on the microphone, counted off the tunes.
So then let's just turn it back and say, why don't you define what you think are good qualities of leadership in the 21st century?
Well, when I was a kid in high school, I was in, the high school band and in the orchestra. I was really seeking as much music as I could get my little hands on. My band teacher really inspired me to be a leader, and she made me the drum major of the marching band. I guess I had some ROTC experience, so I knew how to march. But, that put me in that position of being a leader of a large group of marching musicians. I'd go to every football game, we'd march in halftime and all that stuff. And there were times when I had to be fast on my feet and come up with, one time, I went to Bowen High School, so the tubas section spelled out B-O-W-E-N in the tubas. And we were doing some maneuvers, and we end up the march, and I look at the tubas, and they spell out NEWAB. Everybody got backwards, and I had to march them back so that they spelled out Bowen again. There was another time when, I used to command the band, the marching band, with a whistle. I'd give my commands with a whistle. And the whistle fell to the ground, and I'm there in front of the band with only my baton and my voice. So I stopped the band. We're like marking time. And I said, okay, it's going to be spoken commands. Follow the trombones.
Yeah.
And, I conducted the whole halftime show without a whistle and got the band to do stuff. It made me feel confident, gave me the confidence of being a leader.
Right.
But I think it was I knew what I was doing. I wasn't like leading them blind. Which is kind of what's going on sometimes today in the world, where people are claiming to be leaders, but they're just leading them blind. Go get your whistle, man. I think the tubas are spelling NEWAB.
Right. No, I guess I was going to say is, how did we go I guess my whole show for the last, since I started it in January 2011, has just been about authenticity. How have we, in music, how have we gone astray there because we can't identify what a real leader is?
Well, it becomes pretty obvious. Music on the radio has gotten kind of dumbed down. It's like we're we're making it so simple for people to absorb whatever it is we're putting out that we're calling music these days.
Right.
Now maybe I'm dating myself and sounding like an old guy, but that's not the case. I think my musical tastes are still, I may be old in chronological years, but my musical age is still 18. I think I'm pretty wide open. I love to listen to new stuff. I like when I hear somebody, quote unquote, young, a new artist that's really saying something. I try to steer people to that person, to that artist, because those people should be heard. Well, anyway.
No, I think that your soul is still, you're wide open. I mean, can you talk about a recent, maybe in 2016 or in the past year of one of these examples of identifying a younger cat who is going outside the realm of, just the dumbed down music?
Boy. I can't think of anybody right now off the top of my head.
That's all right. You can come back to it if it comes back to you.
I love some of the new artists, but the ones I would be naming are so popular. I'd like to come up with somebody a little more.
All right. Well, marinate on it for a minute because we got more to do. I was going to say, can you talk a little bit about? When you came up in Chicago, there was no more bastion of a place where, the blues was connected at the hip with jazz. It was totally interconnected. And when I talk to cats like Larry Taylor, the great bass player for Canned Heat, and also, John Mayall, and I talk to jazz drummers like Ndugu, they talk about drummers not being able to play shuffles. And they talk about Larry Taylor talking about bass players not being able to play the slap technique. Almost the simpler it is, the harder it is for my generation at 38 and younger to play these almost simple. It's almost too simple because they have this need to overplay. And I wanted you to talk about the simple quality of music and how blues and jazz was really fused at that time.
Well, I always tell my students when I have students that the space between the notes is as important as the notes themselves.
Right.
And which is kind of just saying, simple up, man. You don't need to play all that stuff, and there is a lot of overplaying today. And it's true, to find a good shuffle drummer, it's difficult because guys don't come up playing that stuff.
They don't go back far enough. Ndugu said they consider a shuffle something out of like the Bag of Toto from the late 70s. They're not going back. It's vexing to me why they don't go back far enough, But I guess my also point is that you talk about, the silence is music as well. The space within the notes is music as well.
Absolutely.
But you learned it and had the opportunity to learn it on the bandstand. So, do your students they're not playing 6-7 nights a week, a month at a time, and it's
Well, that's the problem. There's no place to train. I remember when I saw a young Kenny, what's that kid's name? Kenny, the young blues guy.
No idea.
Young blonde,
yeah.
Kenny.
I'm caught in a time warp myself. But anyway, go ahead.
I went to see a new young blues guy who had a great first album, Kenny Wayne Shepherd.
Kenny Wayne Shepherd.
A great first album. And I went to see him, and the place I went to see him was one of his first gigs. It was a stadium gig. It was like Little Feat was opening. It was like a huge venue. And he hadn't played a bunch of clubs. He hadn't played like 5 nights a week, 7 hours a night. When I started out, I was playing 7 or even 8 hours a night in Chicago. It's a 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock a.m. town,
Sure.
So I work from 9 to 5 on Saturdays, 7 sets a night. And, that'll learn you.
Well, do you think that is because, okay, so you can talk to your students and we intellectualize everything now, but you can talk to your students about the silence, but did you learn about the silence on the bandstand?
Well, yeah. Yeah, being a singing player, I'm even in a band situation, I'm accompanying myself, so I got to leave room for my lyrics to come out. a lot of times when cats are backing up a singer, they don't know how to accompany or how to complement that. So, but people should go back. Did you ever hear the shuffle that Jeff Porcaro played on some of those Toto records?
No, I know.
I know. Amazing.
I know.
I played with Porcaro, man, and he was just an amazing drummer. But you can go back to the guys that played with Howlin' Wolf and Muddy Waters. You know, the guys that played on the South Side and the West Side of Chicago. I mean, you wouldn't be able to hold up your head if you couldn't play a shuffle.
Right.
I mean, that's one of the basic. Listen to Albert Collins' records, even the early records, you know, Frosty and all that stuff. It's like a textbook example of how a shuffle should be played and not overplayed and not, you know, played around. It's just like, boom, you're playing a shuffle or you're not playing it right.
I love it.
I used to hold a jam session at we had a club here in Palm Springs for 7 years. And I just didn't want to go to my grave without seeing what it would be like to have our own club. Lori and I, we'll talk about Miss Lori, that's my partner.
Absolutely.
But we opened up our own club in Palm Springs, and I used to conduct a weekly jam session. And, you know, when a drummer would want to, you know, he'd come in, he'd bring his sticks or a stick bag and say, I want to sit in and play your drums. And I'd ask him privately, can you play a shuffle? Oh, sure, I can play a shuffle.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd get up on stage, and, you know, it'd be like in the middle of the first chorus of playing, I would know that this guy is jiving me because he's never played a shuffle and he can't play his way out of a bag. I'd stop the song and I'd say, okay, let's get the next drummer up here.
Wow. Okay, just as a non-musician like myself, how did you know that? He was rushing?
It wasn't even a matter of rushing. It's a matter of you're not playing what I want to hear.
Right.
And you can't play what I want to hear. So get off the bandstand and let another guy come up that can play.
Right.
Now, I had an example of a guy that came in, young guy. I knew his sister, you know, a nice cat. He said, gee, I'd like to come and sit in with you guys. You know, I'm old enough to get in the club now, and I'd like to come up and sit in with you guys. And I said, can you play a shuffle? He said, sure. So he came up, and lo and behold, he couldn't play the shuffle at all. So he went home, and he worked on it for 2 straight weeks. I mean, he must have worked at it for 24 hours a day. This guy was dedicated.
Right.
Because I had embarrassed him by saying, okay, stop, next drummer, you know, you get up. So he came back in 2 weeks, and he said, man, I've been working on this, and I want to sit in with your band. And I said, all right, I'll give you a shot. But you know what might happen? He came up, and he played great. He had been listening to B.B. King records, and he'd been listening to Albert King records, all the Kings, Freddie King. He'd been listening to old shuffle guys that played it like it used to be played, and he played great. And you know what? He made a career out of music from then. And so...
well, I was going to say, I mean, that's a powerful story. Again, it's humbling in the sense that, unlike you, he just can't get on the road with, you know, there's no touring circuit, so he can't get on the road and get loose again. You know, it's like to me, it's very frustrating that as a society, we talked about not being able to identify true leadership, and then you also see these sort of, I mean, there's clubs around, but they're real, you know, high end. You know, you got it's, you know, steakhouses, and there might be a burning trio, but people aren't even listening. You know, so it's like it's hard for that cat to layer on his. Aside from playing in his room, you know, and that's a little bit humbling, you know.
It's true. There's really not a place for a young artist to cut his teeth. You know, we used to be able to come up in clubs and play these joints and just learn how to interact with other players and how to, you know, back somebody up or how to create good solos or, you know, or just play a shuffle. You know, I mean,
right.
There's no place to really work on it. It's like you go from obscurity to theaters and concert and festivals and all this stuff. There's no place to. That's why the example I was talking about with Kenny Wayne Shepherd is he would go up on stage. He disappointed me because he was, from the very first note, he was like what I would call, he was wanking the crowd, just trying to get a reaction out of the crowd instead of just playing some music.
Right.
And making us crazy because we love music. We came to hear the music like on his record. but he was just wanking the crowd.
He was wanking it. I love he was wanking the crowd. No, because it was all about the other stimulation other than the music. You go to a baseball game. You go to the baseball game, it's the same way. Talking to Kal David here, a titan here, intellectual. Can you talk about some of the jazz cats that you got off on, that you got to see in Chicago?
Well, I found, after coming up playing music in Chicago with my friends and learning how to do it, and I came out to L.A. In the 80s. That wasn't the first time I came to L.A. I moved to L.A. in the 60s with my first recording band. But then I moved back to New York. Anyway, I came out to L.A. in the 80s, and I was putting together a band. And I met these guys that played on The Tonight Show. Out-and-out jazzers that came out of the Harry James Band or this was the Doc Severinsen Tonight Show.
Sure, absolutely.
Carson's Tonight Show.
Sure.
And, I got together with some of these guys, and I discovered, these are college-educated musicians that can read fly specks on the paper. These guys can read like they lived it. You show up at a gig, you throw them a chart, and they play it like they've lived it from the first, from the first note. And I discovered, and I say this, that the jazz guys dug me. These guys dug the way I played and the way I performed and the way I sang and stuff. They dug me because I guess they were seeing the authenticity that you get from the street, just from coming up,
exactly.
Not in the street, but in bars.
Well, because jazz blues, that was essentially a street music. It was. So I dig. I really. Can you be specific about who you connected? The Severinsen Band, who was in that Tonight Show amalgamation? Was Ernie Watts, or who was in there?
I love Ernie Watts. I had occasion to run into him several times, but he wasn't the guy. The guy, I had two horn guys that were playing in my, it was called the Kal David Band at the time. I had Bruce Paulson, who was a trombone player, and Tommy Peterson, who was Ernie Watts' sub, and he was on the show towards the end just as much as Ernie, because Ernie was living in Arizona.
Sure.
So Tommy was here in L.A., and Ernie would call and say, "I'm not in town, so do my gig." So Bruce and Tom were my horn section, and Tommy used to write my charts for me. I'd say, let's do Hound Dog, and he'd come up with some bluesy, jazzy horn parts. It was great. The drummer was Art Rodriguez, and Art played with Tom Scott.
Sure.
When Tom Scott had that short stint on the Pat Sajak television show, Art was his drummer. But he was Tom Scott's drummer for a long time. The bass player that I played with, Joel DiBartolo, this was at that time in the 80s. Joel DiBartolo was the Tonight Show bass player. And no one could tell. He had a long ponytail, but no one could tell because he tied his hair up and he never looked sideways. When looking at the camera, he looked like he had regular hair, but he had hair down his back.
So you're saying that you guys had you guys gigged in L.A. as a band, at the Kal David Band.
We did.
Oh, that's
we
great.
did,
Wow.
And we laughingly called it, let's see, we had a nickname for our band. It was a Kal David Band. We called it White Guys Reading the Blues in L.A. Who Drive Volvos.
Because it's funny because you're talking mid-'80s roughly. Is that when you're?
Yeah, early 80s.
Because David Garibaldi, the great drummer from Tower of Power, who's a huge Jake Feinberg Show fan, he moved to L.A. and he said he was in one of the only bands, working bands in L.A. There were no bands. He was in a band called Wishful Thinking. So now we got this other Kal David amalgamation.
Wishful Thinking was Tim Weston's band, right?
Well, and Garibaldi was on Traps, but I'm just saying it was, I want to ask you, you talked about the street before. Can you talk about a memory of going down to the Market Street area and seeing the blind dobro players and the black blues players, and if that had any impact on you?
I'll tell you the truth. At that time, in those days,
yeah,
I was working 7 nights a week. I was working. Chicago's a 5-night town, Wednesday through Sunday, and I would work 5 nights a week, and then I would look for a Monday, Tuesday gig. And if I didn't find one, I felt like I don't know. I felt like something was wrong. I wanted to be playing every night. So I didn't get to go to a lot of those places, like, you know, the places in the ghetto, you know, those places. Every once in a while I did, but it would be after hours. But I used to go down to Maxwell Street. There was a place down there called Smokey Joe's.
Mm-hmm.
They used to sell really cool suits. I bought all my suits at Smokey Joe's. The man who knows goes to Smokey Joe's.
Oh, man, the hipster suits, yeah.
And it was, and you know, Muddy and Wolf and those guys were playing on Maxwell Street at around that time. They were doing it, you know, they would put a blues band in the window to try to attract customers. It was enough to make these guys put their instruments through amplifiers.
Right.
That's why Chicago blues, it came from the country, you know, it came from the Delta. Chicago blues guys were all from Mississippi.
Absolutely.
You know? And
they all came up the Delta, yeah.
And the way they became amplified was they were trying to be heard to get people to come in and buy stuff. So, you know, like Junior Wells put his harp through an amp, probably for the first time in that situation. And Muddy, you know, he played his slide guitar. He got an electric guitar, and, you know, the rest is history. That was a big thing, but I was not there a lot. Because
okay.
I was playing till 4 or 5 in the morning every night.
Right, and there were 4 bars on each corner of the street, and it was just pulsating. And do you know the conga player Big Black?
I don't know him, no.
Well, I really want to connect you guys because this is the cat who played with Dizzy Gillespie, basically integrated the conga drum and bebop, and he lives in he also played on Soul Power, that documentary of the Thriller in Manila, and he went with Hugh Masekela's band. He's your generation. He lives in Palm Springs.
Really?
Yes. I mean, and this guy is, you and him would have a ball together. Speaking of which, that's the second thing. I have a teaching gig here, and when I have spring break, I'm going out to Palm Springs to visit Black, and I really would love to link up with you if you're going to be there, so we could do part 2, and because we have a lot more to get to.
You talking April?
I'm talking last week of March.
Yeah, we'll be here. We don't hit the road until May.
Oh, great! Yeah, because I'd love to.
I don't like to travel in the winter anymore. With this climate change business, winters have been so severe back east that it's like a situation where you travel 3,000 miles and you can't get to the gig, or if you're able to get to the gig, the crowd can't make it to the gig.
I'll tell you, the living here in Tucson too, I do look at the without being a real capitalist at all, I do see it as being a destination spot for many people because we're just not affected by this man-made climate change, which is wreaking havoc now like never before. I grew up on the East Coast. I was a New Yorker, so but we just tapped into Kal David here, just a monster intellectual and player, and I definitely want to talk to your wife, Lori Bono, as well, and so I'll be in touch with you when I'm going to be out there. But I also want to connect you with Black because I think you guys would have a ball.
That would be cool. All right,
and Kal, thank you for being part of the program, man.
Well, thank you, man. I'm glad we got a chance to hook up, and anything, anytime. You know?
Yeah, no, we'll do set 2 in a couple weeks.
Cool.
All right, brother.
I will look forward to that.
Be good, man.
Thank you, and thanks for the spins. I appreciate you playing our music. Did I send you not Crossroads. I just heard you playing something from Crossroads, I thought. But,
no, that was off the Rhinestones album. But we got.
But do you have the Living the Dream record?
No, I need it.
You need that.
I'm
going to send it to you.
Keep burning, Kal. And it was an honor to connect. We'll be in touch. We'll keep this happening.
I appreciate it. And you can send people to kaldavid.com if they want to know more about me, because there's way too much written about me on my website. But
well, we got more to do. Read. All right, man. Yeah. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you again. Take care.
Cheers, buddy. We'll be right back on the.
Feel like